kitchen tiles felt cold beneath my bare feet, a sharp contrast to the warmth still clinging to my skin from the cramped attic room where I'd been trying to sleep. 3 a.m, and here I was again, wrist deep in soapy water, scrubbing at the remnants of a dinner party I hadn't been invited to attend. The mansion was silent now. Earlier, it had pulsed with life. Laughter spilling from the dining room, crystal clinking against crystal, the murmur of voices discussing things I couldn't begin to understand. Business, money, power. Things that existed in a world so far removed from mine that they might as well have been on another planet. I worked the sponge in slow circles around the rim of a wineglass, watching the foam catch the dim light from the single bulb I'd dared to turn on. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, had been explicit in her instructions. Night staff remains invisible. If you must work after hours, keep the lights low. The family values their peace. The family. As if I were somehow separate from the household. A shadow that cleaned and scrubbed and disappeared before dawn broke. My shoulders ached. They always did by this time of night, or morning, I supposed. The dinner service had required carrying countless platters up from the kitchen, each one heavier than the last. My arms had trembled by the end of it, but I'd kept my face neutral, my movements steady. Show weakness in a place like this, and you'd be replaced before you could pack your single suitcase. I needed this job. Desperately. The water had gone lukewarm, so I drained the sink and refilled it, adding another squirt of dish soap. The scent of artificial lemon filled my nostrils. Sharp, chemical, nothing like the real fruit. It reminded me of the tiny apartment I'd left behind 3 months ago, the one I could no longer afford after the factory closed. At least here I had a roof over my head, even if that roof was a converted storage space that still smelled faintly of mothballs. A glass slipped from my fingers. I lunged for it, managing to catch it before it shattered against the edge of the sink. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clutched the delicate stem, imagining the sound of breaking crystal echoing through the silent house. That would have been the end of everything. One mistake, one moment of clumsiness, and I'd be out on the street. Careful, I whispered to myself, setting the glass gently on the drying rack. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window above the sink. Hollow-eyed, hair pulled back in a messy bun, skin pale from too many nights without proper sleep. I looked away quickly. There was nothing to be gained from dwelling on how far I'd fallen, how the girl who'd once dreamed of college and a career had become this. A ghost who washed dishes at 3 a.m. while the world slept. The stack of plates seemed endless. I'd already been at this for an hour, and there were still the serving platters, the salad bowls, the delicate teacups that required special attention. Mrs. Chen would inspect everything in the morning, running her finger along the edges, checking for water spots or soap residue. One imperfection, and I'd spend the next night rewashing the entire set. I reached for another plate when I heard it. A footstep. My hands froze in the water, soap suds dripping from my fingers. The sound had come from the hallway that led to the main wing of the house, where the family's private quarters were located. I held my breath, listening, praying I'd imagined it. Another footstep. Closer now. Panic seized me. I wasn't supposed to be here, or rather, I was supposed to be here. But I wasn't supposed to be seen. The rules were clear. Night staff worked in the shadows, finished before dawn, vanished before the family stirred. Being discovered like this, in my threadbare nightgown covered by an old cardigan, no makeup, hair a mess. It was a violation of the invisible contract that kept me employed. I considered running, but there was nowhere to go. The kitchen had only 2 exits. The hallway where the footsteps were coming from, and the service entrance that led to the staff quarters, which was across the room. I'd never make it without being seen, so I did the only thing I could. I kept washing dishes, trying to make myself as small and unobtrusive as possible, hoping whoever it was would take what they needed and leave without really looking at me. The footsteps stopped. I could feel eyes on me, a weight pressing against my shoulder blades. My hands moved mechanically through the water, lifting a plate, scrubbing it, rinsing it, setting it aside. Act normal, I told myself. Act like you belong here, like this is completely routine. Like your heart isn't trying to beat its way out of your chest. You're the new maid. The voice was male, low and smooth, with an edge of something I couldn't quite identify. Not quite curiosity, not quite annoyance. Something darker, more penetrating. I turned slowly, keeping my eyes lowered in what I hoped was an appropriately deferential manner. "Yes, sir. I apologize if I disturbed you. I was just finishing. Look at me." It wasn't a request. I raised my eyes and immediately understood why Mrs. Chen had warned me, in her clipped, matter-of-fact way, to avoid the young master at all costs. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the dim hallway light, but I could make out enough to know that this was dangerous territory. Tall, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore black pants and a white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with— were those scars? Or tattoos? In the low light I couldn't tell, but it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark, intense, calculating. The kind of eyes that saw everything, that peeled back layers you didn't even know you had. "What's your name?" he asked, moving further into the kitchen. Each step was deliberate, predatory, like he was circling prey. "Emma, sir." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Emma Whitmore." He moved closer to the counter where I stood, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne mixed with something else. Whiskey, maybe. And beneath that, something metallic that made my instincts scream danger. "Emma," he repeated, as if testing how my name felt in his mouth. "How long have you been working here?" 3 months, sir. "And you do this every night? Wash dishes at 3 a.m? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Up close, he was younger than I'd expected, perhaps early 30s, and devastatingly handsome in a way that felt almost cruel. Sharp jawline, full lips that looked like they rarely smiled, and those eyes that seemed to be cataloging every detail about me. "Why?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "Sir? Why are you washing dishes at 3 a.m? The dinner service ended at midnight. These should have been done hours ago." I felt heat creep up my neck. There was a lot to clean, sir. The party was larger than expected. I'm still learning the routines, and I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before morning inspection. He was close enough now that I could see the details I'd missed before, a thin scar running along his jaw. A ring on his right hand, gold with a dark stone that caught the light. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders, suggesting strength carefully contained. "You're lying." My breath caught. "I'm not." "You are." He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "I've lived in this house my entire life. I know exactly how long it takes to clean up after a dinner party. You're doing someone else's work." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I wanted to deny it, but something in his expression told me that would be pointless. He already knew. Mrs. Chen's daughter had the night shift. I heard myself say, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. She wasn't feeling well, so I offered to help. "Help," he repeated, his tone suggesting he knew that wasn't the whole truth. "And what did you get in exchange for this help?" Nothing. I'd gotten nothing except a grudging nod from Mrs. Chen, and the knowledge that I'd bought myself a little more security, a little more time before I could be dismissed for being unnecessary. But I couldn't say that. Couldn't admit that I was so desperate to keep this job that I'd work myself to exhaustion every night if it meant staying off the streets. It was the right thing to do, I said instead. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. He pushed off the counter and moved closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "The right thing to do," he murmured, and there was something almost mocking in his tone. "You're either incredibly naive or incredibly stupid. I should have kept quiet, should have nodded and apologized and hoped he'd leave, but exhaustion had frayed my usual careful control, and I heard myself respond, 'Maybe I'm just trying to survive, sir.'" The words came out sharper than I'd intended, laced with a bitterness I usually kept buried deep. His eyes widened fractionally, and I realized my mistake immediately. "You didn't talk back to the family. You certainly didn't snap at them, no matter how tired or frustrated you were." "I apologize," I said quickly, lowering my eyes. "That was inappropriate. I'm just very tired and I spoke without thinking. It won't happen again." Silence stretched between us, so thick I could almost taste it. I waited for the dismissal, the command to pack my things and leave immediately. My mind was already racing ahead, calculating how long the money in my savings would last, where I could go, what I would do. "Look at me." I obeyed, expecting anger. Instead, I found something far more unsettling: interest. "You're different from the others," he said softly. "They all pretend to be content, grateful for the opportunity to serve. But there's something else in your eyes. Desperation, yes, but also defiance, like you hate being here but refuse to show it." His observation cut too close to the truth. I forced my expression to remain neutral, even as my pulse quickened. He reached out, and I flinched involuntarily, but he didn't touch me. Instead, his hand hovered near my face, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin, before he pulled back. "Go to bed, Emma," he said finally. "These dishes can wait until morning." "But Mrs. Chen works for me," he interrupted, "as does everyone in this house. If there's a problem with the dishes not being finished, she can take it up with me." I didn't move, couldn't quite process what was happening. Was this kindness? Or some kind of test? "That's an order," he added, his voice taking on an edge that made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. I dried my hands on a towel, my movements stiff and uncertain. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." I started toward the service entrance, desperate to escape his presence, to get away from those penetrating eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I'd carefully constructed. "Emma." I stopped, my hand on the doorframe, but didn't turn around. "What's your real story? Why does a woman like you end up scrubbing dishes at 3 in the morning in a house like this? A woman like you." The words echoed in my mind. What did he see when he looked at me? What had I revealed in those few minutes that made him think I was anything other than what I appeared to be? "I needed a job, sir," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "This one was available, that's all." Liar. The word was soft but definitive. I felt it like a physical touch, sliding down my spine. "Good night, sir," I managed, and fled before he could stop me again. I took the service stairs 2 at a time, my bare feet slapping against the cold wood. Only when I reached my attic room and closed the door behind me did I allow myself to breathe. I pressed my back against the door, sliding down until I sat on the floor, my heart still racing. What had just happened? I'd been seen. Truly seen. Maybe for the first time since I'd arrived at this mansion. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than remaining invisible ever had. Through the thin walls, I could hear the house settling around me, the old building creaking and sighing. Somewhere below, he was probably still standing in that kitchen, perhaps wondering about the strange maid who washed dishes at 3 in the morning. Or perhaps he'd already forgotten me, moved on to more important concerns. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt exposed, like I'd just survived an encounter with a predator who'd decided not to strike. Not yet. I didn't sleep. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes I saw his face? Those dark eyes that had stripped away my carefully maintained invisibility, leaving me feeling raw and exposed. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every word of our encounter until the sky beyond my small window began to lighten with the approach of dawn. By the time my alarm went off at 5:30, I'd already been awake for hours. The morning routine was always the same. Shower in the communal bathroom at the end of the hall, careful to use minimal hot water since the other night staff would need it too. Dress in my uniform, a plain gray dress that hung loose on my frame, thick stockings, sensible shoes that wouldn't make noise on the marble floors, pull my hair back into a tight bun that made my head ache by noon, but met Mrs. Chen's exacting standards. By 6 o'clock, I was in the kitchen, starting breakfast preparations for the family. Mrs. Chen was already there, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the gleaming dishes I'd left on the drying rack the night before. She ran her finger along the rim of a wine glass, checking for spots, then gave me a curt nod. "Acceptable," she said, which from her was practically effusive praise. "The young master called down this morning, said there was no need to redo any dishes." my hand stilled in the process of tying my apron. He called about the dishes. Apparently he was up late and saw you working. Her eyes narrowed slightly. He seemed quite interested in your work ethic. The way she said interested made my stomach clench. I kept my expression carefully neutral. I was just doing my job, Mrs. Chen. See that you continue to do just that, she replied. And Emma? The young master is not like the others in this household. He's complicated, dangerous even. Best to keep your distance. It was the most personal thing she'd ever said to me, and coming from her, it felt like a warning wrapped in genuine concern. I understand, I said quietly. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded. Good. Now, breakfast needs to be ready by 7. The young master has requested his meal be brought to his study this morning instead of the dining room. My heart sank. Will I be serving? No. Maria will take it up. She paused. He specifically requested that you remain in the kitchen this morning. Relief and something else, disappointment, washed through me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Staying away from him was exactly what I needed to do. Last night had been unsettling enough. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Breakfast service, then lunch preparations, then the endless cycle of cleaning and organizing that filled the hours between meals. I kept my head down, my hands busy, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythm of work, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he'd moved, all coiled power and casual dominance. The intensity of his gaze, like he could see past every lie I'd ever told myself. The strange moment when he'd almost touched my face, his hand hovering so close I'd felt the ghost of contact against my skin. Emma! I jumped, nearly dropping the crystal bowl I'd been polishing. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, her expression tight. The young master wants to see you, his study. Now. The bowl slipped from my numb fingers. This time I wasn't fast enough to catch it. It shattered against the floor, fragments of crystal scattering across the tiles like diamonds. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mrs. Chen's face transformed, anger flooding her features. Clumsy girl! Do you have any idea how much— Leave it! The voice came from behind her, and she immediately fell silent. He stepped into the kitchen, dressed now in an impeccably tailored black suit that made him look even more dangerous than he had in the middle of the night. His hair was styled back from his face, revealing those sharp features in unforgiving detail. It was an accident, he said, his eyes fixed on me. Have someone else clean it up. Emma, come with me. It wasn't a request. Mrs. Chen stepped aside, and I had no choice but to follow him out of the kitchen. We walked through hallways I'd only ever cleaned, past artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, up a grand staircase that I'd polished that very morning. His study was on the 2nd floor, in a part of the house I'd been forbidden to enter. He opened the door and gestured for me to go ahead of him. I hesitated at the threshold, my survival instincts screaming at me to run. I'm not going to hurt you, he said, and there was something almost amused in his tone. At least not today. The joke, if it was a joke, did nothing to calm my racing heart, but I stepped inside anyway, because what choice did I have? The study was smaller than I'd expected, more intimate, dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk positioned near windows that overlooked the garden. The scent of leather and old paper filled the space, along with that same cologne I'd noticed last night. He closed the door behind us. The click of the lock engaging made me flinch. I turned to face him, my back to the desk, hands clasped in front of me to hide their trembling. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of 2 leather chairs positioned near the fireplace. I'd prefer to stand, sir. That wasn't a suggestion. I sat. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter on a side table, whiskey, dark amber in the afternoon light. He didn't offer me one. Instead, he stood near the fireplace, studying me with that same unsettling intensity from the night before. Tell me about yourself, Emma. There's nothing to tell, sir. Another lie. He took a sip of his drink. You're educated. I can hear it in the way you speak, the words you choose. That's not common for someone in your position. I kept my eyes fixed on my hands. I had some college, sir, before circumstances changed. What circumstances? Personal ones. The command in his voice made me look up. He'd moved closer without me noticing, now standing directly in front of my chair. The height difference was even more pronounced with me sitting. I had to crane my neck back to meet his eyes. Why do you care? The question escaped before I could stop it, frustration overriding caution. I'm just a maid. One of dozens of people who work in this house. Why am I here? Something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, maybe, like I'd finally done something he'd been waiting for. He set his glass down on a nearby table and crouched in front of me, bringing his eyes level with mine. You want to know why you're here? His voice had dropped to something low and intimate, dangerous as a blade. Because last night, I saw something I haven't seen in a very long time. Someone real. Everyone in this house, everyone in my life, they all wear masks. They tell me what they think I want to hear. Show me what they think I want to see. But you were too tired to pretend. For just a moment, I saw who you really are. His proximity was overwhelming. I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint stubble along his jaw, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he watched me. And what did you see? I whispered. A fighter. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but the contact sent electricity racing down my spine. Someone who's been beaten down by life but refuses to stay down. Someone who takes on extra work at 3 a.m, not because she's weak, but because she's strong enough to do whatever it takes to survive. I should have been flattered. Instead, I felt terrified. Being noticed, being seen, it made me vulnerable in ways I couldn't afford. I need this job, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. If this is some kind of game, if you're bored and looking for entertainment, please just let me go back to work. I can't lose this position. His hand dropped away from my face. Why? What are you running from? I'm not running from anything. Emma. He said my name like a reprimand. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. I know everything about everyone who works in this house. I know Mrs. Chen's daughter has a gambling problem that's gotten her into debt with some very unpleasant people. I know that Marcus, my driver, sends most of his paycheck back to his family in the Philippines. I know that the groundskeeper has a daughter with medical bills he can barely afford. He stood, moving back to his drink, giving me space to breathe, and I know that Emma Whitmore enrolled at State University 4 years ago on a partial scholarship, that she was studying business administration and working 2 jobs to cover expenses, that she dropped out suddenly in her junior year, right around the time her mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The air left my lungs in a rush. How do you... I also know, he continued, his voice gentle now, almost kind, that she died 8 months ago, that you lost your apartment 3 months after that, that you have exactly $237 in your savings account and no family left to turn to. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. What do you want from me? He turned back to face me, and his expression was unreadable. Honesty. That's all. No more lies, no more pretending. I want to know who you really are. Why? The word came out broken, all my careful control crumbling. Why does it matter? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. No. The single word was sharp, definitive. He crossed back to me in 2 long strides and gripped my chin, forcing me to look at him. You're not nothing. Don't ever say that again. The intensity in his eyes was almost painful to witness. His thumb brushed along my jaw, a touch that was somehow both gentle and possessive. You don't know me, I managed. You don't know anything about me. Not really. Then tell me. His grip softened but didn't release. Tell me everything. And maybe it was exhaustion, or loneliness, or the simple fact that I hadn't really talked to anyone in months. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I mattered, like I was visible for the first time in forever. Whatever the reason, I found myself talking. I told him about my mother, about watching cancer slowly steal her away while I worked myself to exhaustion trying to pay for treatments that ultimately didn't help. About dropping out of school because I couldn't afford tuition and medical bills simultaneously. About the apartment I'd loved, the life I'd been building. All of it slipping through my fingers like water. About the weeks after her death, when I'd felt so hollow that getting out of bed seemed impossible. About the eviction notice, the desperate job search, the slow realization that I'd fallen so far that climbing back up seemed impossible. I answered an ad for a live-in maid. I finished, my voice hoarse. Mrs. Chen barely looked at me during the interview. I think she just needed someone who wouldn't ask questions and would work for minimal pay. And I needed to not be homeless. My cheeks were wet. I hadn't even realized I was crying. He released my chin and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, silk, monogrammed, and handed it to me. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. I dabbed at my eyes, mortified by my loss of control. "I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear all of that." "Yes, I did." He settled into the chair across from mine, his elbows on his knees, his attention entirely focused on me. "Emma, I'm going to make you an offer. You can accept it or refuse it. The choice is yours, but I need you to really think about it before you answer." Dread pooled in my stomach. "What kind of offer?" "I want to hire you, not as a maid, as a personal assistant." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I don't understand." "My life is complicated," he said carefully. "I have business dealings that require discretion, appearances that must be maintained. I need someone I can trust, someone who isn't connected to the usual circles. Someone who—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Someone who has nothing to gain by betraying me. You don't know if you can trust me." "No," he agreed, "but I'm willing to take that risk." The position would come with a substantial salary, private accommodations, and the understanding that what you see and hear stays confidential. In return, you'd attend certain events with me, help maintain my schedule, and essentially become part of my inner circle. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the catch?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Smart girl. The catch is that my world is dangerous, Emma. Not everyone in my life is going to be happy about you being there. You'd be stepping into a situation that could become complicated." "What do you mean, dangerous?" His expression shuddered. "That's information for another time. For now, I need your answer. Will you accept my offer?" Every instinct I had screamed that this was a mistake, that I should run back to the kitchen, back to my invisible existence, back to safety. But safety hadn't gotten me anywhere. Safety had left me scrubbing dishes at 3 a.m. for barely enough money to survive. And when I looked at him, really looked at him, I saw something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. An opportunity. A chance to be more than I'd become. Maybe a chance to matter. "I'll do it," I heard myself say. "I accept your offer." The smile that spread across his face was predatory and pleased. "Good. We start tomorrow. For now, go pack your things. You'll be moving to the East Wing tonight." He stood and offered me his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it. His palm was warm and calloused against mine, his grip firm. "One more thing," he said as I reached the door. "My name is Dante. Dante Moretti. When we're alone, you'll use it. Moretti." The name meant something. I could tell by the weight he gave it, but I didn't ask. Couldn't ask. Not when my world had just tilted on its axis. "Okay," I whispered. "Dante." The way his eyes darkened when I said his name should have been my first real warning, but I was too overwhelmed, too hopeful, too desperate to see it for what it was. The beginning of my beautiful, terrible captivity. The East Wing was a different world. Where my attic room had been cramped and sparse, my new quarters consisted of a bedroom larger than my old apartment, a private bathroom with marble fixtures, and a sitting area with windows overlooking the estate gardens. The closet alone could have housed 3 people comfortably. I stood in the center of the bedroom, my single battered suitcase looking pathetically out of place on the plush cream carpet, and tried to process what had just happened. 24 hours ago, I'd been invisible. Now I was here, in rooms that probably cost more per month than I'd earned in a year, because a man I barely knew had decided I was... what? Interesting? Trustworthy? The rational part of my brain knew this was insane. The desperate part whispered that I'd be a fool to question good fortune. A knock at the door made me jump. "Come in," I called, expecting perhaps one of the other staff members. Instead, Dante entered, followed by 2 women carrying garment bags and boxes. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look even more devastating than before. "We need to get you properly outfitted," he said without preamble. "Sophia and Claire are going to take your measurements and provide you with an appropriate wardrobe." I stared at the women as they began unpacking their supplies, measuring tapes, fabric samples, tablets with what looked like clothing catalogs. "That's not necessary. I have clothes." "Not for where you're going." His tone was matter-of-fact, brooking no argument. "Tomorrow night you're accompanying me to a charity gala. You'll need evening wear, business attire, casual clothes that actually fit you properly. Consider it part of your employment package." The woman named Sophia, tall, elegant, with sharp eyes that assessed me professionally, stepped forward. "If you'll just stand here, dear, this won't take long." I glanced at Dante, uncomfortable with the idea of being measured while he watched. He seemed to understand, moving toward the door. "I'll be in my study when you're finished. Someone will bring dinner up for you at 7. Then he was gone, leaving me with the 2 women who immediately began their work with brisk efficiency. "Arms out," Sophia instructed, wrapping the tape around my bust. "Claire, make a note. She'll need alterations on everything. Poor thing is swimming in that uniform." I stood perfectly still, feeling like a doll being prepared for display. They measured every part of me, occasionally murmuring to each other about sizes and styles, pulling up images on their tablets for my approval. "What do you think of this?" Claire asked, showing me a picture of an elegant navy gown with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "But isn't it a bit much?" "Nonsense. Mr. Moretti's companion needs to look the part." She made a note on her tablet. "We'll do this one in midnight blue. It'll complement your skin tone beautifully." Mr. Moretti's companion. The phrase made my stomach flutter with something between anxiety and anticipation. They worked for another hour, showing me options, taking notes, discussing accessories and shoes, as if dressing me were a military operation requiring strategic planning. By the time they packed up their supplies, I felt overwhelmed and oddly vulnerable, as if by measuring my body they'd somehow gained access to parts of me I usually kept hidden. "The first pieces will arrive tomorrow morning," Sophia said, as they prepared to leave. "The gown for tomorrow night will be ready by 4. Claire will come by at 5 to help with hair and makeup. I can do my own. Mr. Moretti's instructions," she interrupted gently. "He wants everything perfect." After they left, I sank onto the edge of the massive bed, my mind racing. This was really happening. Tomorrow night, I'd be attending a charity gala as Dante Moretti's companion, dressed in clothes worth more than I'd earned in months, pretending to be someone I wasn't. The thought should have excited me. Instead, it terrified me. Dinner arrived precisely at 7, delivered by Maria, who couldn't quite hide her curiosity as she set the tray on the table in the sitting area. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a side salad, and a glass of white wine. "Will there be anything else, miss?" she asked, the title sounding strange directed at me. "No, thank you, Maria. This is more than enough." She hesitated at the door. "Emma? Are you all right? We heard you're not working in the kitchen anymore." I managed a smile. "I'm fine. Just a change in duties." After she left, I picked at the food, my appetite gone. The salmon was perfectly cooked, the vegetables seasoned to perfection, but everything tasted like ash in my mouth. I kept thinking about Dante, about the way he'd looked at me in his study, about the danger he'd mentioned so casually. What had I agreed to? Sleep eluded me again that night. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at shadows dancing across an unfamiliar ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere in this massive building, Dante was probably awake too. What was he thinking? Did he regret his impulsive offer? Or was this all part of some plan I couldn't see? Morning came too quickly. I rose early from habit, showered in the luxurious bathroom, and dressed in my old uniform since nothing else had arrived yet. I was attempting to style my hair when someone knocked. "It's open," I called. A young man in a black suit entered, carrying multiple garment bags. "Miss Whitmore?" First delivery from Sophia. She said to tell you there's more coming this afternoon. He hung the bags in the closet and left before I could properly thank him. I unzipped the first bag and found casual clothes. Soft sweaters, well-fitted jeans, simple blouses in muted colors. Everything looked expensive and elegant in its simplicity. The second bag contained business attire. Tailored pants, silk blouses, a fitted blazer. I ran my fingers over the fabric, marveling at the quality. A note fell out, written in elegant script. For today, wear the cream blouse and gray pants, understated but professional. S. I dressed as instructed, barely recognizing myself in the mirror. The clothes fit perfectly, making me look polished in a way my oversized uniform never had. I twisted my hair into a professional bun and applied minimal makeup. I had no idea what the day would bring, but at least I'd look presentable. Another knock. This time, I opened the door to find Dante standing there, dressed in another impeccable suit, his hair styled back from his face. His eyes swept over me, lingering in a way that made heat crawl up my neck. "Perfect," he said simply. "Come, we have a busy day." I followed him through the house, trying to ignore the stares from other staff members as we passed. Mrs. Chen watched from the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable. I wanted to stop, to explain, but Dante's pace didn't allow for it. We ended up in a different room this time, a private office with a large conference table. A man was already waiting there, older than Dante, with silver-streaked hair and calculating eyes. When we entered, he stood, his attention immediately fixing on me with uncomfortable intensity. "So this is her," he said, his voice carrying a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Emma, this is Vincent. He handles security for my business interests." Dante gestured for me to sit at the table. "Vincent, this is Emma Whitmore. She'll be accompanying me to events from now on." Vincent circled the table slowly, studying me like I was a puzzle to be solved. "You've done a background check?" "Of course." "And you're certain she's not connected to any of the families? She's clean?" Dante's voice held an edge. "I wouldn't have brought her here otherwise." I sat quietly, feeling like a specimen under examination. Vincent finally took a seat across from me, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Miss Whitmore, I need to be very clear with you about something." He folded his hands on the table. "Your association with Dante puts you in a delicate position. There are people who would use you to get to him, people who would hurt you to send him a message. Do you understand what I'm saying?" My throat went dry. Yes, I think so." "I don't think you do." He leaned forward. "Dante is not just a wealthy businessman. His family has complicated connections, old-world connections, the kind that don't appear in any official records but control more of this city than you can imagine." The implication settled over me like ice water. Mafia. He was talking about the Mafia. I looked at Dante, searching his face for denial, for some indication that this was an exaggeration. Instead, I found only a calm acceptance, as if Vincent had merely stated the obvious. I couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm the head of the Moretti family," Dante said quietly, "which means I control territories, businesses, and interests that require unconventional management. It also means I have enemies, many of them." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself. This was insane. I'd known he was dangerous, had felt it in my bones from that first encounter, but I need to leave. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "This is a mistake. I can't—" "Sit down, Emma." Dante's voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "No." I backed toward the door. "You lied to me. You said this was a job as a personal assistant. You didn't mention that your business dealings were illegal?" Vincent supplied helpfully. "Dangerous, potentially deadly?" "Vincent." The warning in Dante's voice was unmistakable. "She deserves to know what she's getting into," Vincent countered. "Better she runs now than becomes a liability later." Dante stood, moving around the table toward me. I pressed my back against the door, my heart hammering. He stopped just short of touching me, close enough that I had to look up to see his face. "You're right," he said. I should have told you everything from the beginning, but would you have accepted the position if I had? No, I whispered. Of course not. Exactly. His hand came up to rest against the door beside my head, not quite caging me in, but making it clear I wasn't leaving until he said so. Emma, I'm giving you a choice right now. You can walk away. I'll make sure you're taken care of. First month's rent and deposit on an apartment, a lump sum to get you back on your feet, a reference for legitimate work. You'll be safe, comfortable, and completely free of me. It sounded too good to be true. And if I stay? If you stay, you're mine. The possessiveness in his voice made my breath catch. Under my protection, which means also under my control. You go where I say, when I say. You do as you're told, without question. In return, you'll want for nothing. You'll be safe from everything except me. That's not a choice, I said, hating how my voice shook. That's an ultimatum. No, Bella. An ultimatum would be telling you that you have no option but to stay. I'm offering you a way out. The question is whether you'll take it. I stared up at him, trying to read the expression in those dark eyes. There was desire there, yes, but also something else. Something almost vulnerable, like my answer actually mattered to him. Why me? I asked desperately. You could have anyone. Women who are beautiful, sophisticated, who actually belong in your world. Why choose someone like me? Because you're real. His free hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb tracing my lower lip. Because when I look at you, I don't see someone trying to impress me or use me or gain something from me. I see someone who's survived hell and come out the other side still fighting. That's rare, Emma. That's precious. I'm not what you think I am, I whispered. I'm not strong. I'm terrified, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Good. His smile was dark, almost predatory. Fear will keep you sharp, keep you careful, keep you alive. The last word hung between us, heavy with implication. What happens if I stay and then want to leave later? I asked. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or anger. Then we'll have a very different conversation. But Emma, understand this. Once you're in, once you see what I am and what I do, leaving becomes complicated. Not impossible, he added quickly, seeing my expression. But complicated. Vincent cleared his throat from across the room. Dante, you're scaring the girl. She should be scared, Dante replied without looking away from me. This isn't a fairy tale. I'm not a prince. I'm something much darker. But you're offering me a way out, I said slowly, piecing it together. Right now, before I see anything, before I know anything, you're giving me a clean exit, yes. I thought about my alternatives. The apartment he'd provide would be temporary. Eventually the money would run out, and I'd be back where I started, struggling, invisible, barely surviving. Or I could stay here, in this beautiful prison, with a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure, a man who saw me. I'll stay, I heard myself say. But I have conditions. Dante's eyebrows rose. You're negotiating with me? You said I had a choice. That means I get to set terms too. Vincent actually laughed. I like her. What are your conditions? Dante asked, his tone suggesting he was more amused than annoyed. I want honesty. If you're going to put me in danger, I need to know what I'm facing. No more surprises. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to continue. And I want your word that if I do decide to leave someday, you'll let me go. No threats, no retaliation, nothing. You're asking me to give up control before I've even established it, he mused. Bold. Those are my terms. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. Deal. You have my word, Emma Whitmore. Honesty, and freedom to leave if you choose it. But in return, while you're here, you're mine completely. Is that understood? I placed my hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Understood. He pulled me closer, his lips near my ear. Welcome to my world, Bella. Try not to get yourself killed. It should have been a warning. Instead, it felt like a promise. The gala was everything I'd imagined and nothing I was prepared for. Claire had transformed me that evening. working magic with makeup brushes and hot irons until the woman staring back from the mirror looked like someone from a magazine. The midnight blue gown hugged my curves in ways I hadn't known were possible, the fabric shimmering subtly with each movement. My hair fell in soft waves down my back, and the diamond earrings Dante had sent up, "On loan," the note had said, caught the light like captured stars. I barely recognized myself. Now I stood in the mansion's foyer, waiting for Dante, my hands trembling slightly despite my best efforts to appear calm. Vincent leaned against the wall nearby, watching me with those calculating eyes. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "Good. Use that. Fear makes you observant." He straightened as footsteps echoed from the staircase. "Remember what I told you. Stay close to Dante. Don't engage with anyone unless he gives you permission. And if anyone asks about your background, keep it vague." I nodded, my throat too tight for words. Then Dante appeared at the top of the stairs, and every thought fled my mind. He wore a tuxedo that looked custom-made, the black fabric emphasizing his broad shoulders and lean frame. His hair was swept back, revealing the sharp planes of his face. And when his eyes found me, they darkened with an intensity that made heat pool low in my belly. He descended the stairs slowly, never breaking eye contact, like a predator stalking prey. When he reached me, he circled once, taking in every detail of my appearance. "Perfetta," he murmured, his accent thickening slightly. "You'll be the most beautiful woman there." "I doubt that," I managed. "I don't." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No. Absolutely not." "Yes." The drive to the venue was surreal. Dante's car was a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark I could barely see out. A different man drove. Not Marcus, but someone younger with military-precise movements. Another car followed behind us, Vincent visible in the passenger seat. "Security," Dante explained, noticing my glance. "Standard procedure." "Is it always like this?" I asked. "The guards, the multiple cars?" "Always." His hand found mine on the leather seat between us, his fingers threading through mine with casual possession. My father was killed in a car on a public street. Blown apart by a bomb planted by a rival family. I was 15. The casual way he delivered such horrific information made my chest constrict. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He was a brutal man who made many enemies. His death was inevitable." His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture oddly soothing. But it taught me a valuable lesson. Never let your guard down. Never assume you're safe. Never trust anyone completely. "Do you trust me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. He turned to look at me fully, his dark eyes searching my face. "I'm beginning to." The hotel hosting the gala was the kind of place I'd only seen in movies. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers, uniformed staff greeting guests at every turn. Our car pulled up to the entrance, and immediately 2 men in dark suits appeared, scanning the area before opening Dante's door. He stepped out first, then turned to help me. As my hand slipped into his, camera flashes exploded around us. I flinched, instinctively trying to pull back, but Dante's grip tightened. "Smile," he murmured. "Let them see you're with me." I forced my lips to curve, trying to ignore the shouted questions from photographers crowding the barriers. "Mr. Moretti, who's your date? Is this a new relationship? Can we get a name?" Dante ignored them all, guiding me up the red carpet with one hand at the small of my back. The touch was possessive, claiming, announcing to everyone watching that I belonged to him. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of designer gowns and expensive suits. Champagne flowed freely, carried by servers in crisp white uniforms. A string quartet played in one corner, while guests mingled and laughed, their voices creating a constant buzz of conversation. I felt completely out of place. "Breathe," Dante said softly, leaning close enough that his lips brushed my ear. "You're doing fine. Everyone's staring. They're staring because you're stunning, and because they're wondering who managed to catch Dante Moretti's attention." His hand slid from my back to my waist, pulling me closer against his side. "Let them wonder." A man approached, older, silver-haired, with a kind of polished confidence that came from wealth and power. "Dante, good to see you, my boy." Richard. Dante's tone was cordial but carried an edge I was learning to recognize. Caution. Thank you for the invitation. Richard's eyes slid to me, curiosity evident. And who might this lovely creature be? Emma Whitmore, Dante said before I could respond. Emma, this is Richard Castellano. He sits on the board of several charities I support. I offered my hand, remembering Vincent's instructions about keeping things vague. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Castellano. The pleasure is entirely mine. He held my hand a beat too long, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. How did you and Dante meet? Through mutual acquaintances, Dante interjected smoothly. Emma recently moved to the city. I've been showing her around. It wasn't quite a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Richard seemed to sense this, his smile sharpening. How fortuitous. Well, I hope you're prepared for the whirlwind that is Dante's world, my dear. It can be quite overwhelming for those not accustomed to it. There was something in his tone that set my nerves on edge. A warning, or perhaps a threat. I'm learning quickly, I said, keeping my voice light. I'm sure you are. He turned back to Dante. We should talk business later. I have a proposition that might interest you. I'm here for the charity tonight, Richard. Business can wait. Of course. Of course. But his eyes held a coldness that belied his jovial tone. Enjoy your evening. As he walked away, I felt Dante's hand tighten on my waist. That man is dangerous, he said quietly. Stay away from him. He seemed friendly enough. That's what makes him dangerous. Dante guided me toward the bar. Richard Castellano runs one of the oldest families in the city. He's been trying to merge operations with mine for years, but I've refused. It makes him volatile. Before I could respond, a woman's voice cut through the noise. Dante, darling. I turned to see a stunning brunette gliding toward us, her red dress clinging to curves that made mine look non-existent. She was the kind of beautiful that seemed almost unreal. Perfect features, flawless skin, the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. And the look she gave me was pure venom. Isabella, Dante said, his tone carefully neutral. I didn't expect to see you here. I wouldn't miss it. She air-kissed both his cheeks, completely ignoring me. It's been too long. You haven't returned my calls. I've been busy. Clearly. Her eyes finally slid to me, taking in every detail with obvious disdain. And who is this? Emma Whitmore. Emma. This is Isabella Rossi. The name meant something. I could tell by the slight tension in Dante's shoulders. Isabella extended one perfectly manicured hand, her smile sharp as glass. How quaint. Tell me, Emma, how long have you known Dante? Not long, I said, taking her hand briefly. I see. She turned back to Dante, moving closer to him in a way that deliberately excluded me. We need to talk, darling. Privately. There are matters we left unresolved. There's nothing to discuss, Isabella. No? Her laugh was brittle. Your father and mine had an agreement, Dante. One you seem determined to ignore, but agreements have consequences, as you well know. The temperature between them dropped several degrees. Dante's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. My father's agreements died with him. Tell your father that if he has something to say to me, he can say it himself, not through you. Isabella's smile faltered, genuine anger flashing across her face. You think you can just walk away, that bringing some nobody to a public event changes anything? She looked at me with such contempt, I felt it like a physical blow. She's a distraction, nothing more. Everyone here knows it. Careful, Isabella. Dante's voice was soft, deadly. You're embarrassing yourself, am I? Or am I the only one brave enough to say what everyone's thinking? She leaned in, her voice dropping but still audible to me. How long do you think she'll last once she sees what you really are, once she understands the blood on your hands? My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to remain still, to not react. This was a test, I realized. Not just from Isabella, but from everyone watching this interaction. And people were definitely watching. Dante's arm snaked around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. The possessiveness of the gesture was unmistakable. Emma knows exactly what I am, And unlike you, she chose to be here. Now, if you'll excuse us." He guided me away before Isabella could respond, his hand pressing firmly against my lower back. I could feel the tension radiating through him, the barely controlled anger. "I'm sorry," he said once we were out of earshot. "That was inappropriate." "Who is she?" I asked, though I already had a suspicion. Someone from my past. Her father and mine arranged a marriage between us when we were children. An alliance to unite two families. His jaw clenched. I refused. It caused complications. "She seems to think you'll change your mind." "She's wrong." He stopped, turning to face me fully. We were near the terrace doors, partially hidden by a marble column. His hands came up to frame my face, tilting my chin until I had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Listen to me carefully, Emma. There are going to be many people who question why you're here, who try to undermine you or make you doubt yourself. Ignore them. The only opinion that matters is mine, and I want you here. Capisci?" The Italian word rolled off his tongue naturally, and though I didn't speak the language, I understood his meaning from his tone alone. "I understand," I whispered. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, the touch sending electricity down my spine. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. The intensity in his eyes suggested he wanted to, but instead he dropped his hands and stepped back, creating distance between us. "Come. We need to make the rounds. Let people see you with me. Establish your place." The next hour was a blur of introductions and superficial conversations. Dante introduced me to dozens of people, some warm and welcoming, others coldly assessing. I smiled, nodded, spoke when spoken to, and tried to remember names and faces that blurred together. But I noticed things too, the way certain men approached Dante with deference bordering on fear, the way conversations would pause when we walked by, only to resume in whispers after we passed. The way security personnel tracked our movements through the crowd, communicating through barely visible earpieces. This wasn't just a charity gala. It was a display of power, a reminder to everyone present of exactly who Dante Moretti was and what he controlled. And I was part of that display now. We were near the buffet when Vincent appeared, his expression tight. He leaned close to Dante, whispering something I couldn't hear. Dante's entire demeanor changed, shoulders tensing, jaw hardening. "When?" he asked quietly. 20 minutes ago. Antonio is handling it, but you should know." Dante nodded curtly, then turned to me. "I need to step away for a few minutes. Stay here with Vincent. Don't wander off." "Is everything okay?" "Business." He pressed a quick kiss to my temple, the first time he'd done so, and disappeared into the crowd. Vincent moved closer, positioning himself slightly in front of me. "Nothing to worry about. Just some associates getting rowdy at one of the clubs. Happens sometimes." "Associates," I repeated, understanding the euphemism. "People who work for the family. Usually it's nothing, but Dante likes to be informed immediately when there's trouble." He scanned the crowd constantly as he spoke. "You did well tonight, by the way. Handled Isabella better than most would have. She hates me. She hates anyone who has what she wants. Don't take it personally." He paused. "Though you should know, her family won't let this go easily. The Rossis expected that marriage to happen. Dante refusing it was a significant insult. So I've made them enemies just by being here." "You made them enemies the moment Dante decided you were his." Vincent's expression softened slightly. "But don't worry. He protects what's his, always has. What's his?" The phrase echoed in my mind, possessive and absolute. Dante returned 15 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes hard. "We're leaving." "But the event isn't now, Emma." The command in his voice silenced any protest. The drive back was tense. Dante sat rigidly in his seat, jaw clenched, one hand curled into a fist on his thigh. I wanted to ask what had happened, but the fury radiating from him kept me silent. When we finally reached the mansion, he helped me out of the car, but didn't release my hand. Instead, he pulled me through the house, past startled staff members, up the stairs to the east wing. To my room. He opened the door and ushered me inside, following and closing it behind him. For a moment, we just stood there, the tension thick enough to choke on. "Dante, do you know what happened tonight?" His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the rage underneath. While we were at that gala, smiling and playing nice, someone thought they could send me a message. They attacked one of my businesses, burned it to the ground. My hand flew to my mouth. "Was anyone hurt?" "3 of my men are in the hospital. One might not make it." He turned away, running both hands through his hair, destroying the careful styling. "This is what my world is, Emma. Violence and blood and constant warfare. People died tonight because I took an evening off to attend a charity function. That's not your fault, isn't it?" He spun back to face me, and the anguish in his eyes stole my breath. I knew there was tension with the Castellanos. I knew Richard was making moves, but I ignored it because I wanted. He stopped, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter what I wanted." I moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. "What did you want?" "One normal evening. One night where I could pretend to be just a man taking a beautiful woman to a party, where I didn't have to think about territory disputes and family politics, and who might try to kill me next." His laugh was bitter. "Stupid. It's not stupid to want normal. It is for someone like me." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something vulnerable beneath the anger. "This is why you should leave, Emma, while you still can, before you get caught in the crossfire." "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" The question hung between us, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. "No," he finally said, the word almost a growl. "No, I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. I want to keep you close, keep you safe, keep you—" He cut himself off, closing his eyes. "Cristo, what am I doing?" I closed the remaining distance between us, placing my hand on his chest. His heart hammered beneath my palm. "I'm not leaving." His eyes snapped open. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. I made a choice, Dante. I'm staying." "Even knowing the danger? Even seeing what tonight was like? Even then?" Something broke in his expression. His hands came up to cup my face, holding me like I was something precious and breakable. "You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both," I whispered. He leaned down slowly, giving me time to pull away, but I didn't. When his lips finally met mine, it was like touching a live wire. Electric, consuming, impossible to resist. The kiss started gentle, almost tentative, but quickly deepened into something desperate and possessive. His hands tangled in my hair, careful of Claire's work, but firm enough to angle my head exactly how he wanted it. I gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, his tongue sliding against mine in a way that made my knees weak. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "You're mine now," he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. Mine to protect. Mine to keep. Mine. "Yes," I breathed, too far gone to question the dangerous territory we'd just entered. Outside the window, the city lights glittered like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, his enemies were plotting. His empire was under threat. Violence waited in the shadows. But in this moment, in this room, there was only us, and that felt like enough. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of contrasts. Luxury and danger, tenderness and violence, moments of normalcy shattered by reminders of exactly who Dante Moretti was. I learned quickly that being his meant existing in a constant state of beautiful tension. Mornings began with breakfast in his private dining room, just the two of us, where he'd read reports while I pretended not to notice the gun holstered at his side. He'd ask about my day's plans, offer suggestions for how to spend my time, all while his phone buzzed constantly with messages he'd ignore until I left the room. The clothes kept coming. A new wardrobe that transformed me from invisible maid to someone who belonged in Dante's world. I attended more events, always at his side, learning to navigate conversations laden with double meanings and veiled threats. I smiled at people who smiled back while plotting ways to hurt us. I wore diamonds that cost more than most people earned in a year and pretended not to see the blood that paid for them. But there were other moments too. Quiet evenings when Dante would find me in the library, pull me into his lap, and simply hold me while the weight of his world pressed down on his shoulders. Stolen kisses in hallways when no one was watching. The way his eyes would soften when he looked at me, like I was something good in a life filled with darkness. I was falling for him, hopelessly, dangerously falling for a man who lived by rules I barely understood. And then, everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Vincent found me in the garden. I'd been reading, enjoying the late autumn sunshine, trying to pretend this was my life now, that I belonged here, that this could last. Emma. His tone made me look up immediately. We have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The kind that involves your past. He sat on the bench beside me, his expression grave. We received intelligence this morning. Someone's been digging into your background, going deeper than our initial checks went. I don't understand. You said I was clean. You are. But that doesn't mean there aren't connections we didn't know about. He pulled out his phone, showing me a photograph. Do you know this man? I stared at the image. A man in his 40s, handsome in a rough way, with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Something about him tugged at my memory, but I couldn't place it. I don't think so, I said slowly. Should I? His name is Marcus Chen. He runs the triad operations in Chinatown. Vincent swiped to another photo, this one older, a younger Marcus Chen standing beside a woman I recognized immediately. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper. That's his sister, Vincent confirmed. Which means the daughter you covered for that night, the one whose shift you took when Dante first saw you, is his niece. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Oh God. It gets worse. Marcus Chen has been working with the Castellano family, the same family that burned down Dante's club 3 weeks ago. He put the phone away, his expression grim. Emma, they didn't just randomly hire you. This was planned. They put you in this house deliberately, knowing Dante would eventually notice you. The garden spun around me. No, that's not. I applied for the job myself. I saw an ad placed by Marcus Chen's people. They've been trying to get someone inside Dante's inner circle for months. You were perfect. Desperate. Alone. No criminal connections. Someone Dante would view as safe. But I didn't do anything, I protested weakly. I haven't told anyone anything. They don't need you to tell them anything. Your presence is enough. Vincent's voice softened slightly. Emma, you're a weakness now. Something they can exploit. The fact that Dante cares about you makes you a target. Where is he? I stood, my legs unsteady. Does he know? He's in a meeting with the heads of the other families, trying to negotiate a ceasefire before this turns into full-scale war. Vincent stood too, placing a hand on my shoulder. But yes, he knows. He's known since this morning. And he didn't tell me? He was trying to figure out how to handle it. How to keep you safe. I pulled away from Vincent's touch. Anger and fear warring inside me. I need to see him. That's not a good idea right now. I don't care. I was already moving toward the house. Either you take me to him or I find him myself. Vincent sighed but followed. Your funeral. The meeting was taking place in a part of the mansion I'd never seen, a conference room in the basement, accessible only by elevator that required a keycard. Vincent used his, and we descended into what looked like a bunker. Wait here, he instructed when the doors opened. I'll tell him you're... But I was already pushing past him, following the sound of raised voices to a heavy wooden door. I shoved it open without knocking. The room fell silent. 6 men sat around a large table, including Dante at the head, and Richard Castellano to his right. All of them turned to stare at me with varying expressions of shock and irritation. Dante's expression went from surprise to fury in seconds. Emma, get out. No. I stepped fully into the room, letting the door close behind me. We need to talk. This is not the time. When is the time, Dante? When were you planning to tell me that I've been a pawn in someone else's game? That my entire presence here has been orchestrated? My voice rose despite my attempts to control it. I deserve to know what's happening. Richard Castellano laughed, the sound cruel. Well, the little bird has claws after all. Tell me, my dear, did you know you were being used? Or were you truly that naive? Shut your mouth, Richard. Dante's voice was lethal. Why? She's already ruined your credibility by barging in here. Might as well let her hear the truth. Richard leaned back in his chair, his smile vicious. Your precious Emma was planted in your house by Marcus Chen. Every moment you've spent with her, every secret she's overheard, every weakness she's seen, all of it has been reported back to your enemies. That's not true, I said, but my voice shook. I haven't told anyone anything. Because they haven't activated you yet, another man interjected, older, with scars running down one side of his face. But they will. And when they do, you'll have no choice but to obey. That's how these operations work. Dante stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Enough. Emma, with me, now. He didn't wait for my response, just grabbed my arm and pulled me from the room. I stumbled after him, barely keeping pace as he dragged me down the hallway to another room. Smaller, private, with no windows. He released me once we were inside, then turned on me with barely controlled rage. What the hell were you thinking barging into a meeting like that? What was I thinking? What were you thinking keeping this from me? I pushed against his chest, anger overwhelming my fear. You promised me honesty, Dante. You gave me your word. I was trying to protect you by lying? By letting me walk around believing everything was fine when apparently I'm some kind of sleeper agent? Hysteria edged into my voice. Do you actually think I'm working with them? That this has all been an act? His hands gripped my shoulders, firm, but not painful. No. Christo, no. I don't think that. But it doesn't matter what I think, Emma. What matters is what the other families believe. And right now, they believe you're a threat. Then send me away. The words tore from my throat. Give me that apartment you promised, that fresh start, and let me disappear. Problem solved. It's not that simple anymore. His grip tightened. Don't you understand? They know about you now. Know that I care about you. If I just let you go, they'll use you against me anyway. You'll be hunted, tortured for information you don't have, killed to send me a message. The reality of what he was saying crashed over me. So what are you saying? That I'm trapped here? I'm saying you're safer with me than anywhere else. He pulled me closer, his forehead pressing against mine. I can protect you here. I can keep you alive. But out there alone, you wouldn't last a week. This is insane, I whispered. This whole situation is insane. Welcome to my world, Bella. His breath was warm against my face. This is what I tried to warn you about. This is why I gave you the chance to leave when you still could. And now? Now you're mine, and I protect what's mine, no matter what it takes. There was something almost savage in his voice, a possessiveness that should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I had in weeks. What do we do? I asked. We find out exactly what Marcus Chen is planning. We figure out who else is involved, and we eliminate the threat. He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. But I need you to trust me, Emma. Can you do that? I thought about everything that had happened since that night in the kitchen. The way he'd seen me when I was invisible, the way he'd given me a choice even when he didn't have to, the way he kissed me like I was precious, held me like I mattered, looked at me like I was the only real thing in his dangerous world. Yes, I said, I trust you. His kiss was bruising, desperate, like he was trying to brand me as his through sheer force of will. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise and threat. Then let me handle this. And Emma? Stay away from Mrs. Chen and her daughter. As of now, they're enemies. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I was confined to the East Wing, with guards posted outside my doors at all times. Vincent brought me meals and updates, each one more concerning than the last. Marcus Chen had gone into hiding. The Castellano family was mobilizing their forces. Other families were choosing sides, picking alliances, preparing for war. And at the center of it all was me, the girl who just wanted a job and a place to sleep. Dante came to me late on the third night. I was sitting by the window, staring out at the grounds, when I heard the door open and close. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. It's done, he said simply. I turned to face him. What's done? Marcus Chen is dead. killed attempting to plant explosives in one of my warehouses. He moved to the small bar in the corner, poured himself a drink. His sister and niece have been removed from the premises. The Castellano family has agreed to a temporary ceasefire while we investigate their involvement. You killed him. It wasn't a question. I gave the order. Yes, he downed the whiskey in one swallow. He was planning to kidnap you tomorrow, use you as leverage to force me into giving up territory. Vincent intercepted the communication this morning. My legs gave out. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind struggling to process what he was saying. Someone had been planning to kidnap me, to use me as a tool against Dante. He crossed the room, kneeling in front of me so we were eye level. It's over now. You're safe. Am I? I looked at him. This beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow become everything to me. Will I ever really be safe in your world? No, he said honestly. There will always be threats, always be people who want to hurt me by hurting you. But I swear to you, Emma, on everything I am, I will spend every day of my life making sure no one touches you. You're mine to protect, and I take that responsibility seriously. Dante. I touched his face, feeling the stubble rough beneath my palm. I can't live like this, always afraid, always waiting for the next attack. Something flickered in his eyes, fear, maybe, or pain. Are you saying you want to leave? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. This was it. My chance to invoke his promise. To walk away from this beautiful nightmare and try to build something resembling a normal life. But when I looked at him, really looked at him, I didn't see a monster. I saw a man who'd been born into violence, shaped by tragedy, forced to become something hard just to survive. A man who'd somehow found room in his dark world for softness. For me. No, I said softly. I'm saying I want to learn. Teach me how to protect myself. Show me how to navigate your world. Don't keep me locked away like some fragile thing that might break. Make me strong enough to stand beside you. His expression transformed, surprise, then something that looked almost like reverence. You want to be part of this? Really part of it? I want to be with you, whatever that means. He surged up, capturing my mouth in a kiss that was both celebration and claim, his hands tangled in my hair, his body pressing me back against the bed. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard. You're sure? He asked, searching my face. Once you go down this path, there's no going back. You'll see things, know things, do things that change you forever. I'm already changed, I said. From the moment you saw me in that kitchen, everything changed. I can't go back to who I was before. I don't want to. Then we do this together. He pulled me up, holding both my hands. I'll teach you everything. How to read people, how to defend yourself, how to see threats before they materialize. You'll attend meetings, learn the business, understand how the families operate. But Emma, you need to understand. This makes you complicit in everything I do, everything I am. I understand. Do you? Do you understand that I've killed people? That I'll kill again if I need to? That the money that pays for this house, those clothes, everything you've enjoyed, it comes from activities that would horrify most people? I thought about my mother, about the medical bills that had crushed me, the system that had failed us both, about working myself to exhaustion for barely enough to survive, about being invisible and powerless in a world that didn't care if I lived or died. Dante's world was brutal, yes, but it was also honest in its brutality. There were no pretty lies here, no pretense that playing by the rules guaranteed safety or success. I understand, I repeated. And I choose this. I choose you. The smile that spread across his face was fierce and possessive. Then welcome to the family, Bella. Welcome home. He kissed me again, slower this time, thorough. And as his hands began to explore, as my body responded to his touch, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of rightness, of belonging. This was my life now. Dangerous, complicated, morally ambiguous, but it was mine. And I was his. Completely, irrevocably his. 6 months later, I stood in Dante's office, reviewing security reports while he met with his captains downstairs. I wore a tailored suit, black, severe, professional, and a gun holstered at my hip that I now knew how to use with deadly accuracy. Vincent had trained me himself, teaching me not just how to shoot, but how to think like a survivor, how to identify threats, plan exits, read body language. Dante had taught me the politics, who to trust, who to fear, how to navigate the complex web of alliances and grudges that governed his world. I'd attended my first negotiation 3 months ago, watched Dante systematically destroy a man who'd tried to cheat him, using words like weapons, until the man was begging for mercy, then watched him grant that mercy, because sometimes showing strength meant showing restraint. I'd learned that power wasn't just about violence, it was about control, about knowing when to strike and when to hold back, about building loyalty through both fear and respect. The door opened and Dante entered, loosening his tie. How do the numbers look? Revenue is up 15% in the Eastern Territories. The new arrangement with the Costello family is working. I handed him the report. But we're having issues with the waterfront. Someone's been stealing shipments. I know. I'm handling it. He crossed to me, pulling me into his arms. How are you handling it? This life? I leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. Some days are harder than others. But I'm still here. Any regrets? I thought about the girl I'd been, exhausted, invisible, scrubbing dishes at 3 a.m. Then I thought about who I'd become, strong, powerful, feared, and respected in my own right. No, I said honestly. No regrets. Good. His arms tightened around me. Because you're stuck with me now, Bella. For better or worse. For better or worse, I echoed. Through the window, the city stretched out below us. Millions of lives, millions of stories, most of them small and ordinary and safe. Once upon a time, I'd wanted that kind of life. Safety, normalcy, the comfortable mediocrity of being invisible. But I'd been seen, claimed, transformed, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Dante's lips found my neck, trailing kisses up to my ear. I love you, he murmured. My fierce, beautiful Emma. I love you too, I whispered back. It wasn't the fairy tale ending little girls dreamed about. There was no riding off into the sunset, no promise of happily ever after. Our future would be filled with danger, with hard choices, with moments when we'd have to choose between right and wrong, and pick survival instead. But it was real. Raw and messy and completely, utterly real. And in a world built on lies and pretty facades, that realness was worth everything. I turned in his arms, capturing his mouth in a kiss that tasted of promise and possession. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, in our fortress of stone and steel and secrets, we built our own kind of paradise. Dark, dangerous, ours. And that was enough.